Hello, this is some guidance for grad students on how to use Microsoft Word well for writing theses and papers. And first of all, I'll just say that there are alternatives to Word, but many people end up using Word because it's the simplest thing and it's widely available. And actually, there's nothing wrong with it, but it can have major problems if you don't use it in an effective way. So I wanted to address that by making this video, which has some guidance about the problems with Word and some best practices that I've come to use. So, now the biggest problem in Word is that it's often unstable and it can crash and you can lose days of work. And I have to say that I think without fail, every single thesis that I've ever tried to edit and review for a student in Word has crashed at some point, and I've lost, half a day's editing, which is awful for me and it's awful for the student because I have to then remember what I said and go back over it, and I forget something. It's just not. It's just awful. It's very bad for you as well, of course, if you lose your work because you have to do it again. Right, don't need to explain that. So, however, if you follow my practices, then we're going to minimise the possibility that it crashes, and we're also going to minimise the amount of work that we lose if it does crash. Another thing about Word is, and it's more of a mild annoyance than a major problem, but you can get some incredibly bad formatting inconsistencies with fonts messing around, between different fonts when you paste things in, for example, and also the line spacing and all this sort of thing. Again, follow my guidance and this won't be a problem. And finally, let me give you a little example here of how we can get lots of duplication of files in our workspace, filling up our hard disk unnecessarily if we don't think about it. So before I go to my guides, let's just go to an example of a Word document that I've created here. And by the way, I'm on a Mac, but this all applies to Windows as well. So this is a paper that's in progress, being written, and I have a title, authors, and then I've sort of started to lay out some sections in the paper. I've embedded a figure, and I've put a figure caption. So this is where I am. Okay, this is quite realistic where you would be at the beginning of writing the paper. All right, fine. Then I save that, and I send it to my supervisor, and maybe my supervisor is okay. So the first thing the supervisor could do is he could just edit that file and send it back to you. With the same file name, and you could overwrite what you've done. Now, that's problematic because you've lost the ability to go back to what you had before. So you always want to be able to track the history with a particular document. So at a very minimum, you should say, you should change the name every time you edit it. And maybe this goes through a few iterations, right? So it goes back to the student, and then you call it something like new one, and then it comes back to again, and changed again, and then Hopefully you can already see that what I'm doing here is very bad. Okay, now, so anyway, I'm just copying the file here, but you have to imagine that each of these files is a new version with input from either the student or the supervisor or a colleague, right? Now, looking at this, I've got no idea what order these changes happened in. I don't know who did what, who made a particular change. I don't know what this paper's about because the title of the document is just paper, which is completely ambiguous. And in all of those edits, I may have edited the text, but in fact, the figure, this image, has not been edited at all. And yet, I've duplicated that file space. This is half a megabyte, this file, and the only reason it's half a megabyte is because of that image file. So I'm filling up my hard disk here with these massive files. So what should we have done? Well, the first thing we should have done is we should create a folder called figures. We should take the figure out of the paper as an image file, and here it is. This is the figure, right? And we should put it into this folder called figures. we should give it the name figure 01 so that I know exactly what that figure file is. Then I come to my original paper. Let me delete these now. Here's my original paper. And I delete the figure. I do not embed the figures, okay? But I keep the caption so I know exactly where the figure needs to go. If you want, you can write a little note for yourself, fig 1 here, but not necessary. Save that now. So now my file is suddenly very small. It's 13 kilobytes because all I've got in the file is text. And that's going to make a big difference if I start duplicating this, right? Because if I'm only changing the text, I don't want to keep duplicating the figure and wasting my file space. So the figure is always just this file here. Now, the next thing I should do is I should give it a meaningful name. So it should be something like, I don't know, water, plants, paper. And then maybe it's by a student called Susan. Then I'm going to say R0, which is telling me it's revision 0, and SS is the acronym of the student. You know, that's the person who created the file. SS. So you have a name that has the name of a meaningful name, in this case, water, plants, paper, Susan, so that I know what this is, and you know what it is. It's got underscore R0, which is the revision number, and then it's got underscore the person that made the last change. So then that goes to the supervisor and they edit it, and it becomes back as R1AI, for example, and then it comes back to you again, and R2SS, and so on and so on. Right? And some people would say this is bad, but there's actually nothing at all wrong with having many copies of a paper, because the paper itself is tiny, because it's only text, and we're not duplicating the figures. All right? And just to say also that while this editing process is going on, I've got 2 people working on it, you always let your partners know when you're working on the file so that you don't accidentally end up with 2 people creating R3, in other words, like this, because in this situation, I don't know which one is more up to date. In fact, they've both been edited, and that's not good. Right, so let me come back here then. These are my rules for working well with Word. The first one is to set up the folder structure before you start working on the document. So you need a folder where your paper is going to be located, and then at a minimum you need a subfolder in that folder called figures, where all the figure files are going to be located, as I just did. Let's just quickly do this. So I'm going to create a new folder called, what was it called? Water and trees, I don't know. I'm just making this up. Water and trees paper, okay? Da, da, da. And I'm going to create another folder here called figures. Now you might want to have other folders as well, like for example you might have a folder called data and a folder called analysis, where you have scripts that analyze the data and so on. Anyway, that doesn't matter. For now, the main thing is to have the figures. Okay, do not embed figures in the document. Right, so I've said that and I've explained why. Okay, another thing that the problem with the figures in the document is they make the file very large and more likely to crash. Okay, we want to minimize the chance of crashing our document. If you have to submit a document with figures embedded, in other words, to a journal or to a project partner or whatever, you do that at the very, very last minute, and then you probably export it as a PDF. Do not format your document until the very end. Yes. So let me come along and let's now create a new blank document just to go through this. So the first thing I'm going to do is write the title. So whatever your title is, like this. Then the authors, Susan Smith and Andrew Ryerson. Can't type. And then you probably want to flesh out the structure of the document. So normally if it's a paper, you're going to have an abstract, an introduction, And you're normally going to number the sections as well. So let's number this 1.0, enter. Now, Word is trying to help me now, and I don't want its help. Okay, I do not want Word to start automatically numbering things for me, because that's another problem. Okay, so I'm just going to hit undo, edit, undo, auto format, and now it's not auto formatted. So now I can come down and I can manually create my next section and so on, right? And I have some text in each of these sections, blah blah blah. Sorry. Okay. Now, so I'm not messing around with any formatting. Just to make it easy for yourself, you can bold some of the text. So I would bold the section headers. But that's all, okay? That's just to make it slightly easier for you to read. And if you have subsections, for example, 3.1, this, you can also bold that. But don't try and mess around with heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and so on. Okay, this stuff. Don't do it. It's just too fiddly. You can do that at the very, very end when all of the text is finished, okay? But not before that. So, let's file, save this into the right folder. Ooh. Again, copying what I said before, water and trees, paper, Susan. Let's not put Susan down. R0, and it's created by SS. Okay, that's it. That's the level of formatting detail that you want. You also don't want to mess about with line spacing until the very end. I've got another video where I talk about how to insert equations using the equation editor, so you do need to learn how to do that, and you do need to adopt best practices for that as well. So I won't go through that again here, but you should use the equation editor, but no other level of sort of formatting. Okay, next. If the document is very large, for example, a thesis, split sections into different files and merge it as a PDF. Again, this is just nice, a nice way of organising things, and is also going to minimise large duplication, a bit like when we took the figures out. So this is a good idea as well. So use chapter 1 is one document, chapter 2 is another document, so on. Learn to use an equation editor and use it consistently for all equations and symbols. So please see my other video about how to insert equations in Word, and try to use that consistently. Use a well-organised file naming convention for progressive document revisions, which I've explained already. And now this is a controversial one. Do not track changes while you edit. This causes crashes. Now, tracking changes is a good idea and it's very, very helpful. I'm sure you've seen the word track changes feature. Just write a sentence. This is a nice day, isn't it? And then you save that. Oops, isn't it? Save that, close it, send it to the supervisor. Supervisor edits the file name, edits the document, comes along and goes review track changes and says enough there, isn't it? Okay, so now you see what he's done. That's nice, okay. The problem is, this is one of the things that makes Word unstable and likely to crash, and then you lose everything. And this has happened to me so many times now. So I don't want you to do it like this.